From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Our connection this hour was made in a joke about the president. Comedians have been making politicians the targets of their jokes for centuries. It's a time-honored way of taking down the powerful a notch or two. It can also be good fun, of course. But a growing group of comedians say that President Donald Trump has killed comedy, or at least killed the idea of political comedy, because Trump is so outlandish, they say, so extreme, that he can't be parodied. Well, don't tell that to comedian Paula Poundstone, who never misses the chance to put President Trump in her routines, or her podcast interviews, or her videos. Want to listen to one example of that?
Beautiful Easter message, by the way. What did you post? Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the straight, you crazy, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah, President Donald J. Trump. Oh, God is speaking through you for sure. A lot of people don't know this, but God curses like a sailor. I mean, in one of his earliest recorded conversations, he said, "Eve, what the are you doing?" And he used to engage in some really raunchy animal husbandry humor with Noah.
The Eve line got me there. Poundstone has said that the time for cowardice is over. She's been using her platform to provide really a lot of social commentary, political commentary, swirled with acid and, of course, humor. Poundstone is an NPR favorite, a regular on Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, and she's coming to Rochester on Friday for a show at Hochstein Performance Hall. But first, she joins us on Connections, and it's good to have Paula Poundstone back on the show. Thanks for being with us, Paula.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So when you say the time for cowardice is over, can you tell me more about what you mean by that?
You know, there was a time I still don't really see myself as a political comic. I'm not a, I'm not a constitutional expert or anything like that. But as you say, for a very long time, I've thrown in some. My act is largely autobiographical, so I talk about what I'm thinking about and what I'm doing, and a lot of times I'm watching the news and watching what's going on, and so I'll throw in a joke here or there about about politics or about a politician, and I've certainly done that since Reagan, maybe even Jimmy Carter. I can't remember anymore, but when, as we sort of, went further and further down the golden escalator, and there were more and more Trump jokes to be made, I used to do it almost apologetically, I think, because I didn't want to upset people. People who are Trump, supporters were very dogged about it, and it's quite different than any kind of any other Republican president that I've ever made jokes about.
Mm-hmm.
The reactions are very, very different. They're very sort of personal. People feel very offended in a way that they never did before, because Trumpism and Republicanism are two entirely different things. But anyway, so I used to just be sort of apologetic in the way that I went about doing it, and now I realized a while ago, months, not years, that the time for cowardice is over. That we really do have to speak out, whether it upsets somebody or not, because we're hanging on by a thread. And I don't want, I want my children to have a better life than me. And I don't want this time to have passed and feel like, gosh, I didn't say anything.
It feels sort of macabre and bizarre to be sitting here talking to you at a time when we are 8 hours away from the deadline set by President Trump about obliterating an entire Iranian civilization. And so,
yeah,
I in a way, it almost feels sort of inappropriate to talk about comedy, but at the same time, comedy has been used as a point maker, a sort of a point of commentary for centuries. And it seems to me that you think, well, now more than ever, we seem to need that. Yes?
Yes, absolutely. It helps. It's a spoonful of sugar, I guess, in a way. It's also, it helps identify what's going on. When you say it in a funny way, I think people are are sometimes more, more open to it. It's also what I know. I'm, I've been doing this job for 40 something years. And by the way, I disagree with the premise that Trump has ended comedy. I disagree with that entirely. The truth is, if this was all made up and it wasn't real, it would be the funniest thing in the world. The only thing, you're right. Who knows what'll happen? Although, listen, if infrastructure week is any kind of, measure, I don't think the Iranians have anything to fear. He does have a tendency to say, something's going to happen and then not. But why are we under the tyranny of a man who says such things? Why? Why does anybody even need in our daily lives while we're trying to address what we need to address? Why do we even need to take an ounce of our energy to fear that an American president would even say such a thing?
Well, let me take this in two different directions. First of all, when it comes to comedians who intentionally avoid politics, there are plenty who intentionally avoid politics, and people like Nate Bargatze, who, one of the most popular comedians in the country. He says,
I never heard of him.
I somehow doubt that.
No, I've never heard of him. I work alone, and so I don't. I don't have a, what do you call it? I don't have like a river. I don't have a feeder stream of
pop
comics.
culture. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But all right, so if I'm introducing Nate Bargatze to you, I would introduce him as someone who's become very popular on the premise that there is enough comedy in everyday life that he doesn't need to mind something divisive like politics, and he intentionally avoids that because he says people hear politics in everything and they don't need it from his comedy. What do you think?
Well, that's a possibility too. That's a way to go. I don't view myself as a political comic. I started doing the thing that you played a clip of. I started making these videos in mid-August. I call them Hey Donald Trump videos. The premise is that I am talking directly to him, that like we're FaceTiming. And, they are generally speaking, my tone to Donald Trump is friendly. I tell him over and over again, I say, I like you, Donald, but, and then I go on to say, whatever the problem may be at this point. And they've, picked up a little bit of steam on the internet, and they are kind of fun to do. And people write to me, oh my gosh, the comment section. People are like, oh my God, you're getting me through. And I am a sucker for that line. I'm thoroughly exhausted. I have my regular job. I do a podcast called Nobody Listens to Paula Poundstone. I'm in theaters. I have more than enough work to do, but I started doing this silly thing. And when people started saying that it was helpful to them, I'm trapped. I have no way of stopping now. So I make these every night. And, but if you go to see me in a theater, yes, I talk about Trump. I almost can't help it sometimes, because he is on my mind a lot. And why not? But it's not the soul of what I do.
But you're not avoiding it by choice, of course. Yes.
I do not avoid it by choice. And in fact, what I did was, give myself permission. Like there's been a point, it's not so much now, but there was a point where, where there were audience members that would get mad and storm out. And it's interesting because I read an interview one time with Wanda Sykes, where she was having the exact same problem at the time that I was having it, which was that it was this very sort of, it was a very sort of performative storming out of audience members that were upset that you made a Trump joke. It was a while ago. It was not so much now. It was a while ago.
Like the 2010s, the first administration?
Yeah. Yeah, and to some degree, maybe the deadwood's out of the room now. I don't know, but I stopped worrying about it. And the other thing, it's weird. If I were to go to a show and I didn't like it, I would maybe go to the ladies' room and then not go back in. And that would be that. But these kind of, when the people would leave these shows, and again, I think Wanda had the same problem, which was, they had to, all the focus had to be on them. They had to make a big deal of it. So what an odd way to, there was something about it that just felt strange. It just felt like Trump's army. It wasn't just someone who wasn't enjoying what you were doing. It was someone who had like this assignment to let everyone know, which again is kind of Trumpism. It's this very selfish, like we can't, nothing, no tides that rises, that rise all boats allowed. Yeah, but it's not solely what I do at all.
I think that's kind of the modern, what social media has done to our brains, though. It's like, number one, every thought can and maybe should be uttered publicly, and number two, the sun revolves around you. I mean, I recently saw a post by someone in the Finger Lakes region who, at the time where TSA agents or TSA, all the funding issues are happening, all these airports are just a disaster. It's a mess. Lines are long. Well, he travels and he goes, well, the line wasn't that long here. So I just want to say this is more fake news. And I guess this is why people don't trust institutions. And I'm going, listen, buddy, just because you had a flight that worked out doesn't mean there's not like millions of people who are missing connections or are late, and the sun doesn't revolve around you. But I think social media has broken our brains a little bit like that, Paula.
Well, that may well be true. It may also be, on one of the days since the TSA thing began, I was in the Chicago airport, and it was very early in the morning. So it was one of the first, I was there for one of the first flights out. And they were, when I checked in at the ticket counter, the woman, and they don't normally do this. Normally they'll tell you, go left or right towards, security. But this woman says to me, she says, okay, go over to your left and then go out the door. And I said, I'm sorry, because I've not been instructed to go out the door before. And she said, well, that's where the line is now. It's out the door. And, so I followed the instructions. I went, I stood where I was supposed to stand. And it was in fact a long line. It moved crisply, but it was in fact, a long line. And so I posted a joke about it. And, in a little while, other people were commenting on the joke, blah, blah, blah. Or maybe it was even later that day, someone sent, I think it was a picture of the security line being very small. And well, that's very possible that later in the day it was very small.
Right.
But it was the same thing. It was as if to say that my description, and it was only a joke, but that my description was, phony, fake, inaccurate. And they do have a team of people that do that sort of thing. So it may well be that one posts, on a sensitive subject like that you trip some sort of a switch.
I guess.
And you end up with bots that are, that also take it away from what the issue is, right? Because then the issue becomes, whether or not you're an honest broker, as opposed to whether or not the line is long.
Well, so I want to listen to a couple other clips here that I have for you and get your take on this. There was a recent conversation on the New Yorker podcast between David Remnick of the New Yorker and Conan O'Brien, and they had this exchange about President Trump in particular. Let's listen.
Does Trump feel funny to you anymore?
No. Years ago, when I was at Harvard and working on the Lampoon, we would try and think of magazines we could do a parody of. And there was one magazine we always knew we couldn't parody, which was the National Enquirer. If a magazine has as its cover, Elvis still alive, marries alien, and they have a baby that's a 3-speed blender. That's what the real magazine's coming out with. You can't do a comedic take on that.
Yeah.
It's very difficult, or I think impossible to do. And I think Donald Trump, to me, if he were a magazine, it's the National Enquirer. There's a lot that's so bombastic and so outrageous and so unprecedented that how do you, oh, I've got a great Trump impression and I have him saying this. Well, that's not crazier than what really happened yesterday. So I don't know how this is funny.
All right, so what do you make of that, Paula?
His Harvard education was wasted. I think you can do jokes. I find
Wow.
I find Trump jokes funny, depending on the Trump joke, obviously. But I don't think because he's so wacky, he puts himself out of range at all. And I also think that part of the reason it makes sense to me to make Trump jokes is that it's our coping mechanism. It's excuse me. Pardon me, I don't have a cough button.
That's okay.
I do have a chronic cough, but no cough button. So it's nature's coping mechanism, making jokes, a sense of humor, and we have it, and so I use it. I think dogs might have it, maybe raccoons, and of course anything else that we're directly related to, like chimpanzees or gorillas or something. But it works, and therefore I personally use it. I asked Dahlia Lithwick, the great Supreme Court analyst, if we end up in the gulag, will she be in a cage with me? And she said yes. And so I'm all set. I feel that if I can be with Dahlia Lithwick, who has the greatest vocabulary and the use of that vocabulary of anyone I've ever known in my life, you know what? When the resistance comes and we're liberated, I'm going to turn to them and say, just a few more minutes. I'd like to say, I just need to spend a little bit more time with Dahlia Lithwick. So I feel that I'm covered.
That'd be an amazing person. You'd learn a lot by sitting next to her.
You would learn a lot.
You would learn a lot.
Oh my God, she's funny, and she just has the words that she uses to say what she's saying are just perfect.
So I want to take a little diversion, and Rob, I'm gonna.
Oh my gosh, you can't take a little. No. Oh, I thought you were gonna take an excursion.
No,
don't take an excursion.
No excursions. I'm gonna leave that for.
Yeah.
The people
What about all those travel companies that have excursions? Like now they're all screwed. They can't.
He's really ruined that word.
Yeah.
I think he actually meant incursion, but he said excursion, and then he just stayed with it.
More than likely.
Yeah.
And by the way, just stayed with it. That right? Isn't that the personality?
Well, sure.
Isn't that the tech? It's the technique, right? Of just keep saying it. What was he telling? I think he's at his best at Easter. I really do. Not this. I mean, this year was interesting too. It's when he sits at the table with the kids, or when he's like crouched down with kids.
Yeah.
Last year, not this year, but last year, he was showing them his Donald Trump attempted assassination baseball cards. Do you remember that?
Oh, of him, like the fight cards.
Yeah.
He's like pumping his fist after his ear was shot. Yeah.
Right. And he's like showing this to little kids.
Yeah, they're like 6. Yeah.
And this year, what did he say to them?
Today,
I know.
He was talking about the auto pen. President Biden signing, not being able to sign bills with his own pen. He's talking to 6-year-olds about this.
Yeah. These 6-year-olds barely have any idea who he is, let alone who Joe Biden is, because Joe Biden was not president during the time where they could speak. I find his Easter presentations some of his funniest.
Well, and so what I want to do, if you don't mind, Rob, I want to recue that clip that we have from the start here, and I want to ask Paula. The diversion in my own script is I want to ask you a little bit about your approach to the art of comedy, because when I listen to someone like Mike Birbiglia, he loves to break down a joke, and he talks a lot about how in his own work, whether it is in a video, in a routine, in stand-up, he puts a lot of emphasis on the weight of each word, and he'll play with different words and he'll move them around. And then, but in the social media age, then you've got to be on different platforms, and now you're supposed to be on TikTok, and now you're supposed to be putting videos out, and you probably can't spend as much time. So I want to listen again to what Paula said about President Trump's Easter message. The Eve line is amazing to me, and I want to ask Paula if this is just sort of a riff, or if she's just if this is just a riff, or if she's actually kind of writing this. But let's listen.
Beautiful Easter message, by the way. What did you post? Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the straight, you crazy, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah, President Donald J. Trump. Oh, God is speaking through you for sure. A lot of people don't know this, but God curses like a sailor. I mean, in one of his earliest recorded conversations, he said, "Eve, what the f*** are you doing?" And he used to engage in some really raunchy animal husbandry humor with Noah.
So, Paula, is that a riff, or are you writing that first?
Oh, I rate these.
Okay. Yeah.
I rate these. I add to them. I mean, I add to them and change them as I go along as well. But I wouldn't have the, I wouldn't, they're not long. I would never be able to just talk. I can on stage, but in this format, I would find that impossible.
And in this modern,
so yeah, I was typing away, and I came across the Eve idea.
God, and the animal husbandry. So, but in this sort of a million different platform era that we're in, and there's all this pull. At least, I think a lot of people who are in public facing spaces, you go like, well, am I supposed to be on TikTok? Should we be on Instagram? Like, are we on YouTube? Are we doing enough shorts? Do you enjoy this better than when it was fewer platforms and more just specials, stand up, live performance? Is this better or worse for you?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, I mean,
meaning that there's multiple platforms.
Yeah, and there's an expectation. At least I sense the expectation that, like, well, you did a great routine one day, but like, what have you done for me lately? What's your next? Are you having a video tomorrow? Are you doing a video today? Should you do 2 different shorts? I mean, like, it's constant content, and it's a beast to kind of keep feeding, and that could be exhausting.
Well, it's absolutely that. Yes, it is, and I'm exhausted. Yeah, it's absolutely that. I don't know. People have this idea that things are so different on one platform to the other, that you're being received by an entirely different group of people with a different mindset. I find that questionable. It's like, Americans love to feel that we're all so different, and it's part of what's gotten us in this mess. The whole, that we're all so that we forget sometimes that we have more in common than we have differences. Whatever idiot said that no 2 snowflakes were alike, where did that come from? Who looked at all the snowflakes? That's ridiculous. Surely there's plenty of snowflakes that are the same. And, there's no evidence, and there couldn't be, because they melt quickly, to indicate that every snowflake is different. And in the same way with human beings, we really are alike in a lot of ways. So these platforms, people go, oh, it's much nicer over on Blue Sky. Well, I guess that depends who's responding to you. But yeah, overall, it does feel like I'm shoveling coal into a giant furnace.
Well, I mean, and boy, just looking at the podcast, the Nobody Listens to Paula Poundstone, turns out to be an incorrect podcast title because you're doing a ton of work there. You could do once a month. And, so why work at this pace here? Obviously you work if you love it, I guess, but wow, it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. Well, right now I've sort of, as I said, I started doing the Hey Donald Trumps in mid-August. And then 87 days ago, I started doing an additional daily series, which is shorter, but it's a countdown until November 3rd, wherein I try to give people something they can do every day to save our democracy. Because hand-wringing is not as helpful as you may think. And again, not an expert in any way, but I try to sort of, read up and pollinate from different really good, podcasts and sources on this sort of thing. I often encourage people to listen to Heather Cox Richardson, who is, you should get a college credit for every time you hear her. She's just fantastic. But what I decided, because each of these, they probably take, certainly the Hey Donald Trumps take about 4 hours. Mm-hmm. And the other ones can, I can do it in 2 probably. So that is a lot of work. And I'm really, really tired. But what I decided is that I don't know where I get a year as a number, but I decided that I'm donating my life for a year to try to help save democracy. I mean, if everyone puts their oar in the water in some ways, sometimes individually and sometimes collectively, we will fix this. We absolutely can, and we must. And the consequence of doing nothing or just wringing your hands is so much greater than the consequence of doing something. And so much worse, that is.
Yeah. So tell me specifically, who is doing nothing the most, or who annoys you the most by just wringing their hands when you think they could be doing more?
Oh, I don't know any particular,
it's not the news media. It's not people in power. It's not Democrats in Congress. It's not Republicans in Congress.
Oh, well, I do not understand what the Republicans in Congress think they're doing. I mean, I just don't get it. Unless it's entirely based on blackmail. And by the way, people go, well, they're afraid of his tweets. I don't think so. I think it has to be something bigger than that. And so it may well be that he, threatens their families or threatens them with some, horrible revelation about their personal lives. I don't know, but it's certainly not facts that are guiding them. It's not what's best for the American people that are guiding them. It's some form of self-preservation that's driving them forward. And I don't know where it comes from. Does it come from the, sort of Epstein crowd as a whole? Because clearly a bunch of rich white men from around the world sat around, in addition to trafficking girls, they also were dividing up the world, deciding, who gets to exist and who doesn't, and who gets to, the new world order. I mean, the arrogance of it, the hubris of it is shocking. But yeah, it's not good. Would it be weak commentary to just go, it's not good?
Well, we referenced recently the great historian writer Barbara Tuchman. She wrote a book about the 14th century when there were wars and literally the Black Plague, and like a third of Europe died with pestilence. And she summed it up by saying it was a bad time for humanity, which was like, yes, it definitely was that. That was We nailed that part. So I want to listen.
Yeah.
I want to listen to one other clip for you with you. Before I get to this clip, you've said you admire the late night hosts, especially Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel, for what they've had to deal with from this administration. Can you just tell me a little bit more? I don't know how well you know them personally, but what it's been like to watch
Not
the
at all.
last year. Okay, what's it been like to watch the last year with them?
Well, they've been brilliantly funny, and they've been highlighting stuff that's important for Americans to pay attention to and to understand. They've done it with obviously they're informing us, but they're informing us with humor, which is just people have an appetite for that in a way that they don't if it just seems like they're being told some sort of political information. And in this climate, there is, for those guys, because because they have such big platforms, there is some danger. And Trump likes to go after, and he tried to do it to Jimmy Kimmel, and he's done it successfully to Stephen Colbert. But Colbert, they go, oh yeah, we're taking you off the air in May. And by God, he just kept going, just kept doing it. And I have just a world of respect for that. And I realized neither of them write their jokes. They have big teams of people writing those jokes, but they are delivering them. They hired the people, and they have the courage to tell those jokes.
I will just say about Colbert, I love when he asks people about what they think the meaning of life is. He had a really beautiful interesting exchange with Ricky Gervais about Gervais's atheism. Stephen Colbert, of course, is not an atheist. So there's a lot there that goes beyond just raw comedy. But setting that aside, what I want you to respond to is this clip that's gone viral. This is actor Vince Vaughn. He was recently on the Theo Von Show, and the two of them offered a very different take on what late-night comedy shows like Colbert and Kimmel have become. I want to listen to that.
I think it's one of the reasons why, I've seen a lot of the late shows have struggled.
Oh,
because
bro.
all they did during the only person they can make fun of at a certain point was just white redneck kind of people, and then everything tanked after that.
Think about that. But see, they never get it right. The podcasts have gotten so much more popular with less production, less writers, less staff. And the reason why
we have two people working here, and both of them are hungover. Then one guy has shingles.
But the place is clean. I like that. You keep a clean place.
Thank you. Yeah, we did a vacuum.
But yeah, because people want authenticity.
Yeah.
And I think that the talk shows, to a large part, became really agenda based.
Yeah.
They were going to evangelical people to what they thought. You know what I mean? And so people just rejected it because it didn't feel authentic. It felt like they had an agenda. It stopped being funny, and it started feeling like I was a class I didn't want to take.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
I'm getting scolded.
So Vince Vaughn says Colbert and Kimmel make him just feel like he's getting scolded by lefties in a class, and he didn't even sign up for the class. And he thinks that's why these shows are going off the air, that they're not doing well. What do you make of that, Paula?
I think he's wrong. But, I mean, for me, first of all, in the old days, one of the last programs that was on late at night was The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and before that with, I don't know, Jack Parr or whoever it was, right? But, and there were only 4 channels, including PBS, which I never included when I was a kid. And there just wasn't that much to watch. And therefore, everyone watched The Tonight Show. But as time has gone by, there's more and more and more choices. And, somehow we ended up with this sea of late night shows and late night hosts sort of vying for the same audience, vying to do the same job. And honestly, I find a lot of the interviews really, really boring because it's always, somebody, ultimately they're promoting a movie or a television show, which is fine, but they don't, they're digging really hard to find something to say, like a witty story that they could tell about their, their past, or about, something, that happened on the set. And it's just not that interesting at a point, so I think that's part of what they struggle with. They struggle with the fact that those kinds of shows have been on for so long and people's appetites maybe just change. But I don't think it has anything to do with this, being schooled and blah, blah, blah. And even what they said was kind of contradicted themselves. They said, that what was it? They can't have an agenda. They have to be authentic. Do you think because someone's authentic, it means they don't have an agenda? I would disagree with that.
No, that's an interesting point. In fact, a lot of people I hear who say, I don't want any politics, I just want to live my life, are pretty conservative. And that seems to be kind of a default, that if you see, I just want to affirm, I've seen a lot of what Paula's talking about there. That's an interesting observation. I would also say, Paula, in decades past with late night shows, it might have been more interesting for the general population to see celebrities be interviewed, because there weren't countless places where they would get access to what celebrities are doing or thinking, because there weren't podcasts, and there wasn't TikTok, and there wasn't videos and reels posted every day, and Instagram. It was like, okay, I'll sit down and listen to Harrison Ford. This is interesting. Well, now everyone's supposed to be posting 10 times a day, and no thought that you have is original. I mean, I'm being facetious, but I just think that makes the format a lot harder to survive in the modern era. But,
Well, I think it does. And this idea that, everyone has turned to podcasting. Yes, but have they turned to one podcast? No, for the most part. There are literally millions of podcasts, and that audience is divided up. The world of podcasting is a little bit like our overall economy, in that there is a 1%, and then everybody else is scrambling, for crumbs. But, there are millions and millions of podcasts, and you can, you can almost craft a show that suits your personal needs. You can. One night I was on stage and I was talking about podcasting, and this is, I don't know, a few years back. And I was explaining to the audience, I said, because I had an audience at the time that didn't necessarily even know what a podcast was. So I would, try to explain what a podcast was. And I would say, one of the virtues is that you can listen anytime you want. It's just waiting for you. So long as it's been posted, it's just waiting for you. I said, the other virtue, I said, you can find a podcast on any topic, I said, I can, there is a podcast about lichen. And, somebody in the audience took it upon themselves to Google that when I said it, and they shouted out, "There are two," which really made me laugh. They're really, I mean, it is so diluted that honestly, there's a podcast for everyone, like it or not.
Well, after we take our only very short break here, we're going to get some audience questions for Paula Poundstone, who's joining us, a comedian, a panelist on Wait, Don't Tell Me, the host of the Nobody Listens to Paula Poundstone podcast. So there's another podcast in the sea of many, and Paula works very hard at that. And Paula Poundstone is coming to Rochester on Friday for a show at Hochstein Performance Hall. Tickets still available for that. So let's take a brief break, come back with your feedback for Paula Poundstone.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Mary Cariola Center, proud supporter of Connections with Evan Dawson, believing an informed and engaged community is a connected one. marycariola.org. And Excellus Blue Cross Blue Shield, working with members to find health coverage for every stage of life, helping to make care and coverage more accessible in more ways for more people across the Rochester community. Details online at excellusbcbs.com.
I'm going to put this first email in the category of there are two podcasts on lichen. This is from Tess, who says, "Dear Paula, someone did look at thousands of snowflakes and discovered they were all different. William Snowflake Bentley lived in Vermont." Snowflake wasn't his actual middle name. I think that's what his nickname was. William Bentley lived in Vermont in the last part of the 19th century. He took over 5,000 photos of snowflakes by using a microscope and camera to get the image. Lots of these images are on a website. They are gorgeous. Enjoy them. So apparently all snowflakes really are different. Although the larger point that you were making, I think, is more important. But go ahead, Paula.
I would still argue with sample size there.
Yeah.
I mean, I realize that 5,000 sounds like a lot, but not when there's, infinite number. It isn't. So my guess is that if the snowflake where there's sort of a circle in the center, and then there's like little
I know.
little arms that come out from it. Yeah, that one. There's two of those.
But the larger point, of course, I want to ask you a little bit more about, because as much as you feel like this moment requires people not just to post on social media, but to do something about what you see as a real emergency, we got here in part because we are a divided electorate. There's been, it's been a decade of Donald Trump running for American office, and he's won 2 out of 3 presidential elections. So as much as you felt like, people are more alike than different, and there's so much that brings us together, are you surprised at how divided it feels? Do you think that is, sort of manipulated in the way George Carlin used to talk about, or do you think that that's become real? What's going on with the division in society?
I don't know if I would say there's a lot of things that bring us together. I would say that we have more in common than we have differences. And some of that does not bring us together, because I think people feel, because, there are people that feel like, there's not enough of everything for everyone. And so they must make sure that some other people don't get whatever it is, whether it's work or, or opportunity. But that's not because we have differences. We're the same. We would just prefer to be superior to one another. Seems to be a drive. I just saw on the weekend, I watched the 10 Commandments again.
Oh.
And by the way, why is it so easy to confuse Charlton Heston with Clint Eastwood? I've always done it.
It's fair.
But it was the Charlton Heston performance of Moses. That was Moses's thing, according to Charlton Heston anyways, was, there was the oppressor and the oppressed. Doesn't mean it doesn't mean that as time went by, it couldn't reverse itself, that the Hebrews couldn't be the oppressor and the Egyptians couldn't have been the oppressed. That sort of odd drive to dominate seems to be, there seems to be a lot of us that participate in that for whatever reason.
All right, back to the emails. Rick writes in to say, he's rereading parts of the book Blueprint for a Revolution by Srđa Popović, who was part of the Otpar group that helped overthrow Milosevic in Serbia. And he says, I thought this quote in the book would be relevant to the discussion today. Mark Twain said, the human race has unquestionably one really effective weapon, laughter. Against the assault of laughter, nothing can stand. And Rick wanted to know if you've heard that quote and if you think it's pertinent here.
You know what? I've not heard that quote. I've certainly heard the idea, and I think it's very pertinent. Nobody really likes to be made fun of, I suppose. I mean, there's a way of doing it where you're laughing with the person and not at the person. But when people feel laughed at, it's it sort of brings them down. And again, when you're bringing to light a person's weaknesses, and you're bringing to light, like, why are you following this nutter? It makes people, sort of, take a look, I think, at that, which is what a lot of these obviously dictators fear. So I'm familiar with the concept, not with the quote, but I believe it's true. Trump hates to be laughed at. He said so. He said so over and over again. And the irony is that he thinks nothing of making fun of someone else. You could make fun of the disabled reporter. Think about how many places we're jumping off places for all of us with this stuff. Yeah. Where we should have gone, like, wait a minute. Yeah, if a guy could do that, what else could he do? Right? Not good. But instead, we somehow, when I say we, I don't mean, I don't mean every voter, but I mean sort of collectively, we pushed ahead. One of the things that is obviously an enormous problem is Fox and the little Fox offshoots, Newsmax and the like. But that, I think, in my experience anyways, that's new to some degree to America. The idea that you have just a constant fire hose of disinformation in one place that's become, that's so popular.
Yeah, I want to ask you about the whole idea about Trump being laughed at a little bit more, and then I'll get back to a couple more emails here. I agree. I think the analysis of Trump being laughed at, he hates that more than when people say that he's, sort of a strong man. He actually seems to like being called.
Oh, he likes that. Yeah. Of course he likes that.
Yeah,
yes, he absolutely does. Because I think he misinterprets the phrase strong man too.
Yeah, sure. And so this phrase taco, I don't remember who coined the phrase taco. It stands for Trump always chickens out. And it was a way to sort of lampoon Trump for years, in which he would make these grandiose threats or claims, and then doesn't follow through. And somebody is able to sort of be obsequious in his presence, and that they bring him down, and his temperature down on something, and he doesn't follow through. Are you worried on a day like today, where he's talking about maybe using weapons that are unthinkable in the modern age, that he now has been made fun of so much with this taco thing, that he could actually do something really terrible? Do you worry about that at all, Paula?
He could always have done something that was really terrible. I don't think we're any closer to or further away from him doing something really terrible than before or after the taco joke started being made. I am aware, and just because of the kind of person that he is, that, if you say to him, oh boy, you always change your mind, that there is a possibility that it will make him dig in. On the other hand, even during this escalation with the Iranians, he's changed his mind over and over again.
Yeah, he has.
I mean, we, NATO, come, help us. And then I didn't really need NATO. I was just testing them, he's changed his mind back and forth, almost childishly. In fact, maybe very childishly. I mean, there's nothing wrong with learning more information and therefore changing your mind. Yeah. And I think sometimes, when people, when voters and political analysts and commentators like to say, well, the person flip-flops. Boy, I wouldn't want a leader that can't change their mind. Yeah. If they change their mind every day, I think we have a problem. But I wouldn't want a leader that can't receive more information and go, boy, you know what? I think I was wrong before. To me, it's like I don't want to listen to a news network that doesn't occasionally go, you know what? On such and such a night, we reported blah, 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 and we regret our error. That to me tells you that these people are really good at what they do.
All right, so last one here. Jane writes in, loves your work, wants to know, who do you think is the funniest comedian working today? And then she says, alternatively, if you don't want to answer that, who's the funniest comedian of all time?
Yeah, I don't know the answer. It's so broad. It's such a broad pool. And as you know from earlier in our conversation, I don't know a lot of today's comics. What was that guy's name again?
Nate Bargatze.
Not Nate Bargatze. Yeah,
he's a big one.
I mean, you say it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you say it like Nate Bargatze, like, is on everyone's lips. I've literally never heard of Nate Bargatze, and yet I don't feel smaller for it. So favorite of all time. Well, I just don't know. I can tell you some that I think are great. But again, obviously, I just don't know the whole. I don't know all the flavors that are offered. You know, the first time I ever went to a Baskin Robbins when I was a kid, I ordered, I think it was chocolate fudge and French vanilla. And my sisters roared with laughter because as far as they were concerned, we went to this place that had 31 flavors and I chose vanilla and chocolate. Now, my feeling was that French vanilla and chocolate fudge were exotic variants of vanilla and chocolate.
Yes,
I didn't feel that I had but I understand why they thought it was funny. So there are so many varieties that who knows, but I certainly think that Richard Pryor was damn near the top of funniest people of all time. And Robin Williams changed the way stand-up comedy was done. Every comic my age or younger owes a debt of gratitude to Robin Williams for, both sort of opening up the way that stand-up comedy is done and reinvigorating audiences' interest in the form. And I love Bob and Ray, the old radio team.
Well, we owe a debt of gratitude to you for giving us the hour here. And Paula Poundstone, Rochester, we'll see you on Friday at Hochstein Performance Hall for those lucky enough to be there in person. Thanks for sharing the time with us. We'll also hear you on Nobody Listens to Paula Poundstone, your podcast. Thanks for being on the show today.
It was great talking with you. Thanks so much.
Paula Poundstone joining us. More connections coming up in just a moment.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.